Welcome to the Women in Business radio show with Sian Murphy, connecting women in business around the globe.
Hello and welcome into the Women in Business radio show studio. I'm Sian Murphy. My co-host today is
Adelle Martin.
And also in the studio with us we have Susie White, who is a branding and marketing specialist. She's also a personal branding expert.
I am now.
We get them in here and we get them to, I don't know, do that today. So it's like Mr. Ben. Is it Mr. Ben who used to come through the shop window today? Mr. Ben will be.
He will.
We are going to be talking about, after we've had our little sort of quick fire round, we're going to be talking about resilience. We're going to be talking about weathering storms when things don't go entirely as you wanted them to. It could be that it is a real storm, that it's landed and it sort of hit you, and it's hit you quite hard. It may be quite a big thing. It may be actually on the surface quite a small thing that you've managed to make into a big thing. It could be something that's been a slow burn, and now the proverbial poo has hit the fan. However, that's what we're going to be talking about. But first off, we are going to be doing our round the table thing and just, I don't know, sharing some ideas and thoughts about what's been happening with our week. So, are we going to do announcements, do you reckon? Yeah.
Go on then.
Should we do it? So we have got the Women in Business Big Show, which is on August the 10th. If you are in the UK, that is going to be at Longfield Academy. We have very, very reasonably priced exhibition space. We have exhibition space there from £25 up to really very expensive. And the idea is that whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever stage of your business you are in, you get to experience exhibiting at a relatively large event without actually breaking the bank. And that's without breaking the bank in terms of what you pay for your stand, and also in breaking the bank in having to have or feel that you need to have lots of branded gonks, whimsies, pull-up banners, shell systems, and goodness knows what else. So you can come along and start your journey, start exhibiting really for around about the price of going to a well-known coffee shop and having a couple of cups of cappuccino and a cake each.
Absolutely.
So that's what that's about. Also starting in April, for subscribers to the Women in Business radio show, which is £7 a month. If you go onto Substack and you can find us, you can subscribe there for £7 a month, is going to be the online networking. So we are going to be starting up online networking. It's going to be 6 o'clock, which means that wherever you are in the world, you can join in without having to get up too early or stay up into the middle of the night, I think.
That seemed that's where we were checking the time zone.
That seemed like quite a good time. So that really is, for your £7 a month, you get to join in with that online networking, you get to connect with other women across the world. For a couple of lucky people every month, they will get to share a little bit more about what they do, and we're in the process of setting up a directory, so you get to be included on the business directory on the website as well. Does the value ever end?
Yep.
Plus you get the newsletter, which means you get the shows hot off the press straight into your inbox if you want that, as well as all of the other bits and pieces that we are starting to look at publishing about being a woman in business, wherever you happen to be. Okay, that's that. Shall we start our quick fire round?
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, so it would be so good when it comes to the what have you learnt this week. In fact, I'm going to start with that. What have I've learnt? One of the things that I've learnt this week is that you need to check what you've printed out before you bring it along for everybody else, including yourself, to look at. I have a little layout that I have here, which sort of is supposed to guide me through the show, some sort of framework. And I've redesigned it and I've printed it. It's so damn small I can't actually see it at all. So once again, I'm just back to doing everything from memory. So I've learnt to check your stuff, check that you can see it before you pack it up at Sparrow Fart in the morning and bring it with you. So Adelle, what have you learnt this week?
What have I learnt this week? I've learnt this week that it's okay to stop and step back. Which I won't go into too much because I'm going to talk about the resilience. If you're on that merry-go-round, only you can step off. And it's okay to step off despite what's going on around you. So I've learnt to step off. And that's it at the moment. I'm working through what that means by stepping off. But it's accepting that you can stop, rather than this culture of you just keep going. And I've made a decision to stop and just to rethink. So yeah, that's what I've learned this week. And it felt okay. It didn't feel like disaster or failure to stop.
Have you learned anything this week, Susie?
So, myself and my husband are good at communicating, and we often have conversations. Is there anything missing? Is there anything else you want from me, etc., etc. One of the things that we've we've learnt this past week, Ben had read it somewhere, we're both solution providers. You know, I'm marketing, I'm a planner, he's a project manager. Our jobs are to provide solutions. And sometimes when you're having a rant or a conversation with your partner, you don't want a solution. So we've introduced, do you want a solution or a cuddle?
Oh, I want that. Right, that's mine. I want it.
Because most of the time you actually want a solution, but it's one of those, a cuddle, sorry, but it's one of those kind of thought-provoking, I'm not personally going to say, well, have you tried this, and what about this, and what about this? Because he's the same, so solution or cuddle.
Do you know?
I'm taking that.
Yeah, I have had. I think we've discussed this before.
We have. That's why we're laughing.
Yeah, we're laughing because we've discussed this before on the show, quite some time ago actually. But it's also a process that I've been with, and it's something that I had to stop myself doing because I'm a solution provider, and sometimes people would say to me, "Oh, do you know, this has happened." Or that's happened, and I'd be in there. Okay, I can see at least 185 things that you can do before next week that are going to make this better. Well, number one, I don't know that they're going to make it better. I've got no idea.
But you're also belittling the emotion that they've come to you with, going,
exactly.
I'm having a bad time with this, or this isn't going right. Actually, they just want an ear and a cuddle.
Yeah.
So yeah, solution or cuddle.
You just want to say, this is what's happening. End.
Yeah. I don't want an opinion. Get that duck out,
lovely.
Put it on your mouth.
The thing is, though, it's not just your partner. I could, even when I talk to my mum, and she's like, no, mum. So I'm going to go home and say to mum, when I say to you this, I just want to cuddle. Yeah, I love that.
I wasn't going to have this as what I've learnt this week, and we've already done the one, read it out, but I'm going to go the other way. And one of the things that I've learnt over the last couple of 2 to 3 weeks, and this is sort of quite personal, and sometimes we need to share personal stuff, is to actually shut up about what you want to say. So I found myself sometimes saying, I feel like this, or I feel like that, or this hurts, or whatever. Very often to my partner, my husband Mark, who would then, have a sympathetic ear or whatever, and actually just shut up. It doesn't matter that your knee hurts, does it? Shut up, because I realised that I was actually perpetuating this. So just stop talking about. Sometimes you need to stop talking about what you're worried about, stop talking about what hurts, and just shut up.
I think being aware of who's receiving that, their perceptions. So when myself and my husband got married, we were going through the work lists, and I said, I'll invite the other directors. And he said, I thought you hate the IT director. Sorry, Chris, if you're listening. And I said, why do you think that? And IT and marketing are generally far. So I'd come home and spoken about IT, probably not Chris specifically, but Ben had this 3-year picture of me not liking IT. I'm like, I literally sit next to this guy every day. I wouldn't say work husbands, but and my husband's negative perceptions of my relationship with someone was completely off. So I think you need to be quite aware that if you are venting, sometimes maybe I just need to shut up.
Yeah, and I just, because there isn't anything that anybody can do about it. It doesn't matter, I may be worried about this or frightened about that. It doesn't matter talking. If it's a situation where actually talking about it isn't going to make it any better, shut up. Because all you're doing is sort of perpetuating it and reminding yourself, because my knee didn't hurt when I'm dashing around here to do whatever and I'm running in and out to get a bottle of wine. Strangely enough, knee's fine. So if you don't actually need, if nothing's going to come of talking about it, just shut up. So that's what I've learnt. So what are you reading this week? Are you reading anything, Adele?
No, I have been onto the podcast at the moment. When I'm in between cars and doing some stuff at the gym. And at the moment, I've just come back onto looking at Jay Shetty's podcast. He's just written a really good book, actually, about the 7 types of emotions. And it's really good, actually. And the bits I'm looking at is on purpose, and it's because sometimes, going into my 4th year, we've talked before around our business. It's like that stepping off that roundabout, one of that first step is what's my purpose again. So again, I just enjoy his. They're 20 minutes long. You know, deals with my attention span at the moment in the car. So I'm just finding that at the moment, and I'm quite enjoying those podcasts.
Are you reading anything at the moment, Susie? It doesn't have to be work related.
I'm listening. So I'm training for a half marathon. I am not a runner. I'm not built like a runner. In fact, when I first started running, my husband said, "You look like you're running on the moon."
You clearly, if you're training for a half marathon, sorry, I think you are a runner.
Apparently so.
Or you run.
So I'm up to long runs, so 15, 16, 17 kilometres. So I've got a whole heap of time to kill where I need to be mentally distracted and not thinking, "Oh, my knee hurts," or I need to shut my brain off. So I'm currently listening to a book called Belonging to the Brand by a chap called Mark Schaefer, and it's about how marketing has evolved so much that traditional marketing doesn't really work, and especially with the way that marketing is evolving with cookies and going into a cookieless world, which we don't need to get into. Marketing is fundamentally changing, and it's about building communities. And actually, if you are somebody, have your own business, it's well worth listening to. So it's about building communities and how you do it and why and purpose. So definitely recommend it.
I've read some of the other bits. I quite like it.
I mean, that's critical for me and us and what we're trying to achieve at the moment, because this is the way that I'm taking the Women in Business radio show, is around that community.
It's really interesting because it also makes you evaluate, if you were to start a community or if you started a community, your role in that as the community starter. And actually, you need to leave ego at the door, and you need to let the community almost narrate itself. And it's chapter 7. If you're going to just fast forward,
can you just say what it was again?
It's called Belonging to the Brand by Mark Schaefer.
Belonging to the Brand by Mark Schaefer.
He's also got a great podcast, and actually follow him on LinkedIn and various bits.
He's very good.
He's really good and is incredibly good at bringing everything down to the kind of almost like the lowest common denominator. So you listen to it and you go, "I get it."
And I think that community, that sense of community, working with other people and belonging, is something that I've noticed in another part of my business, and I've only just joined the dots actually. And sometimes you think, just give me a slap. Where I started a psychic development circle. I run psychic health and beauty fairs, and I started a psychic development circle and also an intuitive circle for people who want to look, because psychic doesn't have to be peculiar. Psychic is psychology. It's what's going on in our brains. And without doing anything, people leapt on it. And that's information. And it was not to do with the learning necessarily, it was the combination of learning and sharing and it being a circle.
And being belonging to something.
Yeah, and I think that's, people want to, they want to learn stuff, they want to learn stuff for themselves, which is something else I'm learning from what I'm doing, it's changed. What people are saying has changed to, I'm buying this for that person, to, this is for me, this is for me. I've had so many people say, this is for me. And learn and then share what you've learned with other people in a friendly, informal, but supportive way.
Definitely. And I like books that are narrated by the author, because
you know who they are, don't you?
Yes. Everything that they want to get across and the points that they want to get across, they labour. So if
you can feel it, can't you, when it's narrated?
And if you're into audiobooks, it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So, productivity tips, tools, whatever. What have you got one for this week on productivity?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I was sharing this one last night, and it's about blocking again into the diary, blocking groups of tasks together. Again, what I'd found by stepping off my roundabout is I'd had diary drift. So I'd gone from blocks that I thought I'd set at the beginning of the year, and then you get, can you just join this appointment, or can you join this call? So I then realised that I need to get back to my blocks of appointments. So if I'm going to make a batch of phone calls, do them all together. If I'm going to be PTing in the gym, then do them all together, not one lunchtime because I'm driving around. And I just realised actually that was some of the challenges. So for me, it works for me. It's block diary, especially when we have moved from online to now I've got a model that's 50-50. I was really underestimating travelling and getting back on a Zoom call. So I've had to literally put an axe to the diary and rework the blocks. It just works for me.
Mine's sort of similar to that. Is just work on one thing at a time and shut everything off. Everything else goes off. Work on one thing at a time. Susie, have you got a productivity tip?
I'm just going to add to that point. I have a teenage stepdaughter, and a couple of years ago we had a bit of a phone ban because teenagers like to be in their phones, and we had a notification ban, so we turned off all notifications on our phones, so we weren't distracted, and we could be present and with each other, which obviously went down really well with a teenager.
I'm surprised you're still alive.
I've kept my notifications off ever since. WhatsApp is on because that's just how we communicate, but every other notification is off because it's distracting. And I was waiting for a phone call yesterday, so I turned up the volume. I also don't have the volume on my phone, so I turned up the volume, and things like noises were happening and all sorts of stuff from WhatsApp, and it's really distracting, and I think that mental headspace is really, really key.
Absolutely. I have a focus thing on my phone. What I can do is, and I'm sure other people can, it's a normal iPhone, is you can let through certain people. So everything is off apart from people. So it's not necessarily that there are no calls, there's only WhatsApp. It doesn't matter how they're coming through. So basically, if there's an emergency with the kids, that's okay. Everybody else is off, and it doesn't matter whether they ring, text, or WhatsApp. And that I find works for me. Everything and everybody is off. But of course, you do then tend to miss calls.
I missed out on loads of stuff. I didn't know about this, but we sent you a message.
Okay, so this is just for you, Susie.
Oh gosh, okay.
It's all right, it's very interesting. Well, it's just that it's one of those things where if Adele and I do it every week, it's like it's the same thing every week. So what do you do to switch off or calm down?
Switch off or calm down. If I don't have exercise in my life, I end up being quite a ratty person.
Okay.
And that generally, if you know when you're juggling life, certain things you go, okay, do you know what? I'm not bothered if we don't eat really healthily this week, and I have a bit of convenience food. That I'm okay to put that to one side. I can't do that with exercise because it helps me switch off. Which sounds really, really daft, but it's that mental headspace.
No, it doesn't. I don't think whatever it is that you do, it isn't daft, is it? It's what you do.
Yeah, so today I'm itching. I need to go for a run.
So you are a runner.
But I also need to get my miles up. But I know that if I don't have that in my day, I'm not going to be in a good place.
Okay, right. I think that's for a lot of people. It's also like me, but I'm not at the point where I know I need to go and do it. I wait until it's all slid horribly downhill, and I think I really must get up off this chair because I can't move. So I think get out, exercise, do it regularly. That's your thing.
It is.
From a woman who isn't a runner who goes running. Okay, so what? And this is just for you.
Go on then.
This is just for you. What's the biggest thing that hasn't, you notice I'm not using the word failure, that hasn't gone your way? So is there one thing where you look back and you go, that is not what I wanted?
Gosh, when I moved to America with my then job, I moved for the job, I thought that I would be out in America forever. I was like, this will be the green card, I'm literally going to be American. And I was there for 2 years and came home. So it
Is that because you didn't like it, or?
A lot of reasons,
Right.
a lot of reasons, but I thought it would work out and it didn't.
Okay.
But in a, we were talking earlier on about being, learning. It was a huge learning journey for 2 years, and one that was quite uncomfortable at times because you're completely put out of your comfort zone, and quite lonely actually. When you move as an adult, it's actually quite hard to make adult friends. So it was quite an interesting experience, and I thought it was going to be one thing, and it definitely wasn't.
There's a reason that we include this, because a lot of the time, a lot of stuff doesn't go right, and sometimes there's something that goes so wrong, fails so badly, that if we're not careful, it becomes a defining moment, but in the wrong way. It's not something that sort of springboards us into something else, but it's something that we look back on. as a, oh God, if that hadn't have happened, then this, nothing else would have, everything else would have gone right. And I think sometimes it can be really discouraging when things don't go as people want them to go, and especially if you're starting out as a businesswoman and you have a plan and it fails, that can be so discouraging that it can put people off. And the reason I include this is because I think there's a big learning there, which is actually it can go as badly wrong as it can go, and you can still move forward and still create a fantastic business and still have a fantastic life with it. And so I think it's really useful to hear that actually, stuff just doesn't go okay, but we're all here. So the next question that we ask is the sort of the other end of it. So what is your superpower?
Oh, do you know what? When I started consulting, I had a paragraph that I'd written about my superpower, and then realised it was maybe a bit cheesy and wouldn't land properly.
But you had the concept of it.
I did have the concept of it.
Right, perfect.
My superpower is energy and positivity. It doesn't get dialed down that much. And I'm genuinely a glass half full, if not completely full, but I'm also a realist. But I'm quite content with life. I'm quite happy. I'm quite positive. I'm energetic, and I bring a good vibe.
I think so often we focus on what we don't do very well. We weren't good at maths and we need to get better, or we're not good at this and we need to get better, and we sort of totally step over the fact that we all have a superpower. There's something that each one of us is absolutely brilliant at, but we don't focus on that. We focus on everything that people tell us we're no good at.
Our brains are hardwired to be negative.
Yeah.
So if I said to you, tell me 5 bad things about yourself, you would reel them off. If I said, tell me 5 good things about yourself, you would maybe get 1 or 2 in, and then
absolutely.
And we're hardwired to err on negativity.
And it's almost it's very difficult to overcome it. But once you know that that's how it's wired, and that's why we always post this. What's your superpower? Anybody listening in, if you don't know what your superpower is, or at least 3 things that you are absolutely star at, just go and listen to what other people say to you. You will have got probably words people will say things to you that you haven't listened to. So go and listen. What are words that come up in when people are talking to you or talking about you, or things that you know that you find so super, super smoothly easy?
Smiling.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I wish I could see. Where are we? I can't even see where we are now. Okay, so I think we're probably at the end of our quick fire round, aren't we? I can't think of anything else we normally say.
Just having a quick scan of the
I think we're there. So let's have a bit of a dive into the topic of conversation for this show, which is it's resilience, but let's sort of, that's a bit of a posh word that people use for stuff, isn't it? But really this is about weathering storms. It's about dealing with stuff when it goes wrong, and it is going to go wrong. Stuff is just going to go wrong. So I think if we got I think everybody can come up with some examples of stuff that can go wrong, but you can go bankrupt, can't you? Your plans can be sort of derailed. You may have set up an event at a venue and suddenly the fire alarm doesn't work, or the electric goes off and you can't get into the building. There are all sorts of things that can happen. Some of them quite serious, some of them quite minor, some of them are quite minor but seem serious. Some of them are quite serious, and perhaps we don't give them the due that they deserve. But let's talk about them. They're going to happen to everybody in business. They're going to have to go through some of this. So let's have some examples. Let's have some strategies, some things that we can use to actually sort of start moving them forward. So, Adele, do you want to start? Have you got some ideas?
Yeah, so again, if we, just looking sort of over the last, maybe, I would say, coming out of the Christmas period, especially when, I'm working with business women and I'm running 2 businesses as well, and I was talking to them about the rhetoric going into the end of the year was energy prices are going to go up and these things are going to go up. And I think when we talk about weathering the storm and resilience, there's one thing seeing that or hearing about it on the news, which is very different when it lands in your cash flow. Okay, and I think at the moment these things are hitting cash flows. There's some challenges, and then actually there's one thing, and we were talking about weathering the storm. There's one thing weathering a storm that you've created yourself because you failed, versus weathering in a storm you've got no control over, because I can't control the energy prices and I can't control these. I can't control that perhaps my clients haven't got the discretionary income that they did have. And so women working in discretionary income areas, like their business is based on that, there's less of it. So it's whole weathering that storm and what you can do about it. And I think we're just starting to get to the crust of that, because what we're now in February, and we've got the second set of bills in, perhaps some second set of credit card bills or things from Christmas. And I just think there's just that element of what that resilience is. So for me, and again, we've talked to it before, you can do one or two things around that. You can bury your head in the sand and not look at the numbers, and then what I find when I do that, I exaggerate them and things seem a lot worse. So I think the first thing is, for me, on resilience, is, like I said, step off that merry-go-round, and it's as hard as it is get that cash flow and look at it, because it might not be as worse as I think it is. And sometimes I think we're just like, we push the can down the road and hope it'll be okay. It's a very brave thing to actually hit that. You've got to stop.
You need to put your big girl pants on sometimes, don't you?
Yeah.
And actually sit down and look at the numbers.
Yeah. And it's hard.
Because it is what it is.
Yes.
It's not going to the fact that you've looked at it. This isn't is it Heisenberg's uncertainty principle? I can't remember where or is that the one where when you look at it you actually affect it? This isn't it. You don't look at it and change it. It doesn't change from a particle into a wave simply because you've looked at it.
No.
The cash flow, you don't get more money in the bank because you ever look at it, or less money. It is what it is, but it can be scary. But you've got to do it.
But you have, and that for me, in terms of resilience, that's the biggest thing to bring up first.
My tip for that actually is, when it is looking really bad, or you don't know how bad it is, but it's really scary, is to get out of the environment that you're normally in. So if you normally look at this stuff in the office, get out of the office. Go to a cafe if that's feasible. Go to a different location. Just get a slightly different perspective on it. With other people, with the life and world going on.
And you know what? I'll tell you. So exactly that. I picked up my laptop and I went to one of those lovely pubs that have like single booze, so you don't feel like you're taking a table up. And I was there in my world, and I was looking at it, and there was this group of 4 women, older women, and they were clearly having a good time, and they were all individually trying to take selfies. And I said, "Would you like me to take a group photograph of you?" Went, "You're such a lovely young lady." And I stood for 10 minutes. I had 4 phones doing all of this, and my daughter says I'm rubbish at taking photographs. And I sat, and they went, "We haven't seen each other since before COVID, but we all made it." I had 10 minutes. They said, "Sit down and have a little drink," and I had a glass of water. Do you know what? When I went back to look at that cash flow, I felt okay.
Yeah.
But that's what I did.
It's a different environment.
I loved it.
Get out where there are perhaps slightly different people. Get a bit of life, bit of like
normal.
What's the word? Is it like hubbub? Hubbub.
Hubbub. Yeah, that was nice in the restaurant. Just listening to these ladies laugh.
Because it's sort of it's a bit grounding, isn't it? And if you're doing something that you really don't want to do, and something that's quite scary, and you're on your own in the office, the ceiling can get lower and lower and lower, and your world, if you're not careful, can sort of narrow in until it's almost around you. So get out.
Yeah, it was good fun.
Get out. Have you got anything to...
I would kind of take Adele's point and then go, once you've assessed the situation, how do you adapt? Because some things don't go away. So say heating bills, for example, I work from home. I was working downstairs. It's open plan. It costs a lot to heat. It's also quite a cold house. So I've moved to our spare room. I've spent a tiny bit on decorating it so it makes me feel good. My Zoom background looks great, and I'm warmer without having to put the heating on. So it's really assessing how do you adapt and change. And if it's your business and you don't have as many clients because of that discretionary spend, then do you need to change what you do? Do you need to change your rate? Do you need to charge differently? Do you need to find new clients? Because actually, when faced with adversity, with something like the energy crisis that isn't going away and you can't affect change in terms of what those prices are, look internally and see what you can change, so then you feel in control rather than worrying about these external factors.
I think before you can do that, though, you have to stop panicking. I know that if you are in fight and flight mode, creativity is out the window. You know, if the lion's chasing you, it's very difficult to sit down and go, well, I've got my notebook, so hang on a minute, I'm just going to brainstorm some ideas.
Away from the situation allows you to go from fight or flight into a calmer environment, whether it's going for a run, going, whatever it is, to be able to then look objectively and know that when you're in that fight or flight mentality and you're coursing with adrenaline, know that that's not a sensible place to start making decisions. It's like when you wake up at 3 a.m. Anything you think about at that point,
it's 10 times worse.
So just accept that it's going to happen and you're going to think about it, but accept that is a period and it's not reality.
I think the other way that I find quite useful to deal with that, not just with this, but actually sort of generally, is if my mind is overactive, if it's flying around all over the place, is a little bit of sort of mindfulness, which doesn't have to be that complicated. It could be just focusing on how your bum, your bum feels on the floor, on the chin, not on the floor. That's when it's got really bad. How your feet feel. I suspect that potentially as a runner, you do this when you're running, whereas you start to lose yourself in the stride and the gait and how your feet feel and the actual running itself, rather more than your head flying around your brain all over the place, coming up with potential disaster syndromes, or just running away with this endless chatter sometimes that we get.
I agree, and a lot of the mindfulness apps and things that you can get, and if you read up on it, there's lots of coping strategies.
Yes.
So that 3 a.m. scenario, if I'm really worrying about something that I know actually I shouldn't be worrying about, but it's very real at that point, you can visualise a box and you put it in the box, and then you get a helium balloon and attach it to the box, and then you let it float away, and you watch this problem just go away, and it really works genuinely if you start to visualise things in that way. So I think that panic part is understanding how to cope with it.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and I've got some. I did actually write some notes here. Is about overreact or reacting. Don't react. So if something's happened, you've got an email, unless your hand's on the fire and you sort of have to take it out, is don't just leap. Have a procedure in place, and whatever it is, it could be that you've got an email, it could be something's happened. Just have a procedure in place. Stick it on a post-it note that is actually sort of do nothing, stop, do nothing, and just let things sort of vegetate for as long as you can, rather than just diving in, because we tend to dive in very often with an overreaction.
Give it a cuddle, not a solution.
Yes. Just let it be. Just let it be for a little while. Go and distract yourself if you absolutely have to. If there's an urge to generally just pile on and respond, and this is something that we recommend to clients for things like Google My Business or whatever it is now, Google Business Profile, where they may have got a nasty review. Do you know, this stuff just happens. You don't have to be terrible at business. You will just get nasty reviews. Is don't just go on there and go, oh, I'm so sorry. You don't actually know what's happened. They may not even have been a client. You have no idea. So wait, stop, have a look, deep breath, find out what's happened. Okay, what can I now do about this? So I think don't just leap in. Where have we got up to? See, I've been waffling on for so long, I've forgotten. I think we've spoken a few times about talking about the problem. One of the things that I've actually written down here is to talk about it to people that can actually potentially help, but don't go and talk about it to anybody else.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And it's, again, and I will use different people for different situations as well. So sort of stepping back and looking at it. And if I am then going to go and talk to people or present it, I want to make sure that I'm not irrational and I'm leading with the data, and I've got through my fight, flight or freeze element of it, and having a look. And you're absolutely right there. There are some people that I would never ever take it to, and there are people that I would trust in my circle that I can give the solution and they can go, yeah, well, Adelle, that's think about, I know how you react to those things. So again, I'm very deliberate about who I share that problem with, so I know that what I get back is from a good place and the right intentions, and more importantly, they know me. So it's having that close circle.
Also, to add to that though, sometimes talking to somebody that's not attached to you or the business or the problem or whatever it is, just completely independent, is also quite good as a sounding board. So it's picking the audience.
Yes, picking the audience. Yeah.
But very often, I found myself talking to somebody that I actually shouldn't be talking to, because they're not the right person to. potentially because they're not really supporting the situation. So you need to, I think, be careful about who you start talking to about it. Otherwise, you're just doing lots and lots and lots of talking about it and not actually getting anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And oh god, it's somebody that amplifies the
Yes.
problem. I'm trying to think. I used to say, are you an amplifier at work?
Yes.
I know it's another corporate set of languages,
Who
but
suddenly comes up with something that you hadn't even thought of.
so yeah, I was always making sure I was more of a diminisher and a diffuser rather than that's a really bad. And do you know my mum down the road and I know 10 people with that, and I'm like,
and they started off like that, and then it all blew up.
And I'm like, this is really not helping me. So yeah, the ambulance chasers or the amplifiers, and I'm like, thanks for that. Do you feel better? No, not really. But you do, don't you? Because you've told me about all the people that have had the same experience as me,
where it all ended in disaster. You think that's bad? Wait to see what happens next.
Yes, and any time you want to share a problem, you know where I am. Yeah, I do, and I won't.
Funny though, there's a fine line between that and actually someone trying to be really empathetic.
Yeah,
right. I like the word ambulance chaser. You're either you are just like thrive on drama, or someone's actually genuinely trying to be empathetic, going, "Oh, I'm going to share some of myself."
I think it's talk to people who can help or have a valid opinion that you value, and you know that they're going to be honest without actually either diminishing it, going, it's all right, dear, don't worry, or actually exploding it up into something that's far worse.
Absolutely. And sometimes you talk to people that if they see you, and see you as the strong one maybe in your circle, and then when you do say, actually I need some help, sometimes they're uncomfortable that you're not that strong person at that moment, and sometimes they can't handle that. So but you always get through it, so you'll be all right this time. Okay, pat on the back and walk off. I was like, okay. They're not comfortable with me being a little bit more vulnerable or not there. And again, I do laugh at those. So so now but again, it's just through experience. I now know through bitter experience who to share my thoughts with and who not.
I think that's a really good point though. Often people who come across as really strong on the outside are just as fragile, if not more fragile on the inside.
Yeah, you're right. So we're just going to have a little bit of a weep here. Okay, so what else have I got here? I've got perhaps take to your journal and just writing, and make sure that you're actually solving the right problem.
Absolutely. Are you solving the right problem?
Are you solving the right problem? What actually is the problem? And make sure. There's actually an excellent book, and obviously I don't know what it is. Hang on a minute. If you talk amongst yourselves for a while, I'll see if I can find it. It is about exactly that. It's about solving problems and asking different questions to make sure that you have actually got the right problem before you just start flinging solutions at stuff. And this can be quite difficult to do because you sort of got to stop and think and reframe.
Yeah, and again, I know we've talked about this before. So you've got that problem. And also, say for instance, you've been working on several projects or several things. We found it.
I have.
Go on then.
It's called What's Your Problem? Oh, no, now I'm turning it on, and I don't want to do that. I actually want to look at the thing. It's called What's Your Problem? And it's by Thomas Wedelsborg. And the little strapline on it is to solve your toughest problems, change the problems you solve. And it is just about making sure that you are solving the right problem. So, using the example of the gas bills, there may be a deeper problem. Are you looking at the surface level problem and solving that in the short term? Because you have to, but you're not actually going any deeper and looking at what the deeper level problem is going on there, which is that perhaps you're not monitoring your cash flow. If you've had an email from a client it may or may not be very nice, or it may be criticising what you're doing, okay, you can respond to that, but is there a deeper level problem here with your overall communication with, it could be the type of client, Susie is a personal branding specialist, and some of that is who you work with. It could be that you're actually just working with people who aren't a good fit, or that you're not communicating with them properly, or that you're not managing their expectations, so it could be a lot broader.
Yeah, and a build on that, again, the storm, say for instance, I called it in like normal weather, and maybe you've got a project that you're not quite enjoying, it's not quite there, or you've organically created a portfolio that doesn't quite fit. when you hit that storm, if there's any little chink in the armour, it's going to be it's going to crack. So obviously making sure, you know, food's on the table, you know, everything's safe, business. What I've realised over the last year is use that to go, actually, you know, this is the universe saying to me, is that the right fit? And so sometimes when things are just in the normal weather, you go, oh, I'll be all right, it'll be okay. So sometimes the storm comes for me to step back and say, yes, is it the right problem? But also, is my portfolio where it should be? Has it done organically? Is it time to rethink? But I can only do that when I'm in a coffee shop and I know that I've got food on the table and everybody's safe. Then that next level of thinking is actually, what can I take from this, rather than go, I got over it, and you carry on, but you actually don't do anything around that storm.
One thing, we've only got a few minutes left, so I want to sort of touch on this because I think this is a really important thing, because I think it's difficult to do and I think it's not particularly exciting. In fact, I think it's horrible, and so we don't do it. So I want to sort of get some ideas around the table, either what you do or what you should do. Either one of those is fine. About risk management, sort of, you know, identifying and having some sort of system in place to perhaps manage some of the risks that could happen. So for me, the most obvious one would be, okay, if you can't use that venue, what are you going to do? If you get a last minute, can't get in, can't do this, electrics have blown up. So that's quite a simple one for me. So risk management, thoughts? Do you do it or do you not do it?
I do risk management. So you're right. If this doesn't happen, plan A, what's plan B? And looking at mitigated risk, would I say I do it to where I need to be? I've been in good weather and I thought I've done risk, but as the mood is feeling, I think I need to reassess the risk, because do you know what, my environment's changed.
So Susie, do you do risk management?
I was going to answer that slightly differently in terms of financial risk management. So, you know, 2 cars, they cost money. I have a German car that's getting a bit old, its electrics are going to go. So we have car pots. So a lot of the online banks now, you can have little pots where you put money.
Okay.
So we put money into these car pots each month, which will pay for the MOT, a new set of tyres, a service and something else. So we work out how, so when that actually happens, because you find out that you need a new tyre or you need new brake discs and they need to be done that day. So when that happens, we have a pot. We have a holiday pot. And depending on how life is going, sometimes a small bit goes in there, sometimes a lot, but there's a regular payment. So when we get to booking a holiday, we know that we can afford it. And those pots ebb and flow over time. We have a house maintenance pot. So we're kind of managing our financial risk and being able to, that kind of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that kind of very basic, are we safe, are we secure, do I have a roof over my head, am I able to get to work? We have pots that allow us to be able to satisfy those most of the time. Holidays obviously further up there, but that allows us to feel a bit more secure, even though everything else is a bit crazy.
It can be quite scary though, can't it? You know, we don't want to think about risk. You know, we just want to think everything's going to be lovely. And to think about risk, you need to sit down and literally go through everything that could possibly happen within reason with your business, and say, okay, is there anything that I can mitigate? Is there anything I can do that will mitigate this being worse than it can be, so that we can just recover as fast as possible? So I think that's the worst, that you've got to put it's big girl pants again, isn't it? You've got to put your big girl pants on and actually sort of start to think it through, so that you have some sort of plans in place. And if you do hit the buffers, if you do hit the, come off the rails, actually take a breath, don't react straight away, look at what the problem is and look at what problem you need to solve. And understand that actually, the chances are you are going to be absolutely fine, because we've all been there and we're all still here. So thank you very much. Thank you, co-host Adele Martin. Thank you so much, Susie White, for taking part. It's a branding and marketing specialist, taking part in the discussion for this show. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you all next week.
Bye.
Tune in next week to the Women in Business radio show for more stories, ideas, and inspiration to help you grow your business.